And joining us right now, we've got State Representative Salman Bhojani from District 92 in North Texas. Thanks for being here. I know these are busy times.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about this redistricting fight here in Texas right now, and it is a fight. First of all, just at first blush, your thoughts about the map that we saw this week. I think a lot of Democrats were expecting it to be a heavy gerrymander. Was it as bad as you thought it would be?
Absolutely. It's an assault on Texan voting rights, and I feel these are really gerrymandered maps that are going to pack and crack minority voices and minority communities, and will have a devastating impact on not just our state of Texas, but the entire country, as the Republicans are holding on to their narrowest majority ever in the history of the state of Texas until the Great Depression. And I feel like they're trying to do whatever they can to grab onto the power.
Let me ask you about this. As all of this was playing out, this redistricting fight was beginning here in Texas. You were in New Mexico. Can you explain what you were doing there and what you gained from that?
Sure. So we went for multiple reasons to meet Governor Lujan Grisham. Number one was learning from them how they're dealing with Trump's tax cuts. The big ugly bill that came out is shorting Texans and Americans millions and millions of dollars in healthcare, millions and millions of dollars in food benefits, and costing us so many jobs. And so I wanted to find out how Governor Lujan Grisham is dealing with that. The second thing we wanted to make sure is finding allies and sounding the alarm of how the redistricting process in Texas is going to affect the entire country.
And what kind of response did you get on that?
Yeah, she's supportive, and we've had great conversations, and I think she's willing to sound the alarm and continue with her fight. And we need as many allies as possible, because this is not just a Texas fight, and I think that's something that we're sounding the alarm for everywhere.
Is there anything tangible she can do for you, though, here in Texas?
I think the third reason is more tangible, right? So the third reason we went to her was to learn from the flooding that happened in Ruidoso.
Mm-hmm. They've had some terrible floods.
Exactly,
yeah.
Right. So we wanted to learn from her how her leadership has impacted the flooding and saved New Mexicans.
And so, what was the takeaway for you on that issue?
Yeah. So what basically, she said that last year, they had a special session when the flooding happened, and there was only one item on the agenda, how to provide relief for the victims of flooding. There was a bill filed, there was a bill that passed, and the special session ended. That's good leadership, when she was able to focus on one issue at hand and actually do that, as opposed to playing politics and party games.
And so basically you're saying that we need to prioritize that issue here in Texas before we get to redistricting.
Absolutely. My heart goes out to so many victims that are affected by the flooding, and that's what the Texas legislature should be focused on, not playing party games and grabbing onto power.
But of course redistricting is what is sucking up all the energy right now. What is the mood in the Democratic Party here in Texas right now?
We're ready for a fight, right? We always know how to fight because we're in the minority party, and we're fighting to get more allies on our side and to see. And I was there at the redistricting hearing in Arlington, close to my district, and the energy was so much. There was so much energy. There were people just there to speak their mind and let us know that it's so important not to focus on gerrymandering districts that are racially motivated, but on flooding. And that's what we heard loud and clear from them. So I feel like there's a lot of momentum, and Texans are raising their voices and letting our legislators know that what is important. And think about this, right? So we had up until this week, we had 7 redistricting hearings all over the state of Texas without any maps, right? Everything happened in secrecy. And lo and behold, one day after these hearings end, the maps arise. But then we have yet to have. This week is going to be the first time that we'll have a public hearing on the flooding that happened, right? So you see the disparity. Actions speak louder than words, and you can see the action that redistricting has taken the front seat and flooding victims have taken the back seat.
Let me ask you this about the constituency out there. A lot of Democrats and some independents have been angry at Democrats, Democratic leaders, saying you're not doing enough to push back. They've been opposed to some policies at the national level, maybe the state level, and they just feel like Democratic leaders haven't been doing enough. Does that stiffen your spine here now for this fight over redistricting, and are we likely to see a much more aggressive approach now?
I think we're putting all the options on the table and trying to pull every lever that we can in order to fight for constituents, right? Because that's what our goal is. We don't answer to President Trump. We don't answer to Governor Abbott. We answer to our constituents. So Democrats are focusing on lives on the line, as opposed to Republicans are focusing on lines on the map. And so it's really important to continue to focus on,
Let me ask you this. Do you plan to leave town at any point during this whole fight over redistricting to break the quorum?
Like I said, we're putting all the options on the table. We're not keeping anything out there. We want to make sure that we are united in this fight, and we will do whatever it takes to stop Trump from stealing 5 congressional seats and sending 5 allies there to wreak more havoc on Texans and Americans.
But do you foresee you personally going somewhere else at this point?
Right now, there's a lot on my mind. Like I said, we just come from the regular session and we're into a special session. I don't know what we end up doing, but like I said, we're keeping all options on the table.
If you end up personally staying in Texas as all of this plays out, what is for you to do in Texas?
I think we continue to talk to constituents like I've been doing for such a long time, and there's not a day that goes by where I'm not receiving a text message or a call from constituents saying that this is ridiculous. Why are we focusing on gerrymandering, racially motivated gerrymandering on the maps as opposed to focus on flooding victims? There are families in my district that send their kids to camp in Kerrville, and so I feel like that should be our priority, but that is exactly what we'll continue to do, to speak to other state officials and bring more allies, because like I said, what happens in Texas is going to affect the entire United States because of the narrow majority that Congress has.
All right, we'll see where it heads from here. Representative Bhojani, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.